everyone, and welcome back to Reinforce the Horse. Today I'm here with Sarah Lilley, and Sarah is a clinical emotional freedom technique, or EFT, tapping practitioner and sought-after coach and speaker who helps equestrians overcome fears, blocks, and trauma. Known for her holistic and heart-centered approach, Sarah equips riders with tools that cultivate ease, trust, and clarity by releasing the root cause of anxious thinking and limiting beliefs. When she's not riding her horse or working with her clients, Sarah mentors the next generation of practitioners at EFT Universe, the world's largest EFT certification program. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to dive in.
It's great to have you. I'm really excited for this conversation. Recently, I listened to your episode with Warwick Schiller and learned a bit more about you. That was very inspiring, by the way.
Thank you.
I think I would like to start with asking where your horsemanship journey began. How did you get into horses?
I love talking about that. It's funny. I can't remember what got me to that first lesson or that first experience. I don't know, to be honest. I've really been trying to think about it, but I grew up in England, and, when I was about 10, I found myself at a barn somehow. I assume I kind of asked for it. I don't know. And it was that age-old story of the minute I was on a horse, I never wanted to get off, right? And so I would ride every Saturday morning, and one Saturday we'd be just kind of in the ring, in the indoor, kind of doing flat work. And then every other Saturday we'd be kind of released, a whole mass of kids with one kind of instructor, on the Sussex Downs, which are these beautiful, rolling hills in the south of England. And I would just live for those Saturdays because we would be trotting around these adorable little country roads. And then we get these huge kind of gallop stretches where the horses would just go. And I just felt like I was flying, and it was magic. And I just lived for those Saturdays. And then when I was 16, my parents moved us all to the States. My father got a job transfer, so we moved to America. And it was just very different horse culture here. And my parents couldn't really afford to have me ride here. I moved to New Jersey, and it was just super expensive, and it just wasn't really possible. So I ended up finding this little kind of private boarding facility where on the weekends I would muck out stalls in exchange for riding this kind of semi-retired Morgan horse. And so I would just kind of work with her for fun, just have fun with her in the fields on the weekends. And then, fast forward, 20s and 30s, I would tell everyone it was my favorite thing to do in the world, but I wasn't really doing it, actively. I was doing it kind of on vacation and occasionally. And it wasn't until I had a big kind of wake up call, a big trauma in my own life, that it kind of brought me back in such a big way back to horses. So that's kind of where my journey started, kind of really just galloping across the fields.
It definitely sounds like a fairy tale intro to horses. That sounds really quite incredible. And a Morgan horse, I mean, those are just, they're so gorgeous.
Yeah. I think definitely for me, horses and nature are really inextricably linked because of the roots of my horsemanship journey, right? For me, just riding, whether it's trail riding or doing cross country or just working with your horse on the ground, outdoors, to me, those are so just linked for me.
And that makes sense, the grounding and the energy that flows.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even with the nature itself.
Yes,
and to be
100%.
Near and on an animal that is constantly grounded, I definitely can empathize with that feeling there. That's a beautiful beginning to horses overall.
Yeah, it's kind of, you get 2 for 1. You've got the horse kind of, kind of regulating you, and you've got the nature. It's just kind of, the double 2 for 1 for the nervous system in terms of regulation and support. So yeah.
For sure, yeah. So when horses exited your life for a short time, before you said that you entered this trauma, or you experienced this trauma in your own life, was the intro back into horses linked to your the beginning of your tapping I guess
yes, exactly.
interest?
Exactly.
Okay.
So yeah, those two are very much tied together for me. So I want to preface this story by saying my husband's okay. He survived, but we had a, I mean, it was so absurd. It's like out of a bad movie, but it was Christmas morning. And, now over 6 years ago. And we're opening presents Christmas morning at 6 a.m. And my son is playing with Legos on the floor. He's just opened his Legos. He's 8 years old at the time. He's super excited. And my husband starts having a stroke. And so, we rushed him to the ICU. He was in the ICU for quite some time. He came home. He had severe aphasia. So aphasia is defined as having loss of speech and cognition without loss of intelligence. So anyway, it's a really obviously big traumatic time in our lives. EFT was incredibly instrumental to me in moving past that day of having it happen in front of us, of the trauma of that massive transition, of ICU, of all the things you imagine, are so traumatic about something like that. And then once the kind of dust settles and we kind of started navigating this new normal, it was just one of those things where it was a gift out of that experience of, what am I waiting for? Right? Like horses are my favorite thing in the world. It's what I love to do the most. And I'm not prioritizing it. And it was literally one of those moments of, tomorrow's not guaranteed. This literally showed me that. And if I'm not prioritizing it now, when am I ever going to prioritize it? And so one of the gifts out of that was really recommitting to my horse journey and really riding regularly, finding now a dream barn, buying a horse a few years later, like really going all in. And then there was a kind of some trauma in my riding journey at the very beginning. And what helped me move through that anxiety was, again, EFT. And after that, I kind of started pivoting my business to really helping equestrians. So, for me, that trauma, EFT, what happened, coming back to horses are very much linked as well.
Wow. I'm incredibly sorry to hear about your husband's stroke. That sounds very difficult for, just your entire family, but I'm happy to hear that he's okay and
yes,
that
he's
you're
doing
here.
So much better. It's, and I'm sure you can relate to this. They told us in a different way, but they told us at 6 months in his recovery that was where he was going to stay. And at that point, he could barely say a sentence. And that has been proven completely untrue. And on good days now, my husband seems almost neurotypical. He has bad days for sure, and he requires huge amounts of recovery and sleep. And he is, not neurotypical, but he has completely blown past what we were told and what was expected. So
that's incredible. I'm so happy to hear that. It's just, that is a blessing.
Yeah,
for sure. So when horses re-entered your life, I mean, you mentioned going and buying a horse. And can you tell us a little bit more about this horse that came in during this traumatic time in your life?
So my horse Luna came in later. At that point, I had found kind of like my dream barn. And Luna came to me in what felt like a very kind of meant to be kismet way. I was leasing a horse at the time, and gorgeous cute little quarter horse. And she was moving down south. She was moving to Kentucky. And so she was taking the horse with her. And so I wasn't going to be able to lease him anymore. And I was meeting with my trainer to kind of talk about what my options were. Like, could I lease one of her horses? Like what was happening? And the backstory to this is that a friend of mine at the barn had this horse, Luna. And I knew that she was selling Luna. And we had been texting the night before. And I didn't even ask who you're selling her to, because I knew it was really hard for her. And it was a bittersweet decision. And I didn't ask, where she was going or anything. I just was kind of just being there and just it's really hard. And just, she was so I was just so I knew that was happening, but I didn't really know the details. Fast forward the next day, I'm talking to my trainer, and she said, you could lease this horse maybe, or this is maybe an option. She said, when do you, are you looking to buy a horse anytime soon? And I said, no, not till 2025. And this is 2023, not till 2025. And she was like, oh, well, just out of interest, what kind of horse do you want? And I was like, well, honestly, I kind of want a horse like Luna. Like she's got more experience than me. I can kind of grow into her. She's like really fun, but she's also really going to take care of you. And there was a very long pause. And my trainer was like, Luna's for sale. And then there was another very long pause. And I said, I know. And then there was another long pause. My trainer was like, or I was like, isn't she sold? And she was like, no, but she's going. And I was like, oh, and it was just kind of one of those like lots of pause, like what moments. And after probably what was another pause, my trainer said, you know, do you want to try her? And I said, yes. And so half an hour later, she's tacked up. I ride her. And I was like, well, I can't just, this was not on my to-do list today. I can't just be like, yes, I'm buying her. I'm going to take 24 hours to think about this decision. And I think I made it like 22 hours. So I didn't quite make it 24, but I like made it 22. And yeah. So it definitely felt meant to be.
That's amazing. So Luna comes into your life and she's this being that is accompanying you, or like being there with you after you've experienced this your husband's stroke. What was your connection like with her in the beginning of bringing her home, or bringing her into your life?
Oh, such a good question. I've never been thought like what I think innately with her, I felt very safe right away. You know, I felt very like she's going to take care of me. Like I felt just very, you know, yeah, I think that's the word that comes up for me. It's just sort of safe. She felt very like, and also she's super fun, and she's actually a little spooky. So it's not like she's like a perfect, you know, she's not like she's a sort of, you know, like a, you know, she's actually a little spooky and can be anxious sometimes. So that's also true about her. But there was just innately, I just felt very, yeah, just very like safe with her.
I love that. I think that seems to be a common theme with horses, especially when they enter your life at such a difficult low. I think that they definitely can provide such a sense of comfort and safety and like reassurance in a lot of ways, and sort of be able to pull us out of, I guess, whatever's going on outside of, you know, whatever's going on in the day-to-day. Just have a way of, grounding and also bringing us back to the present moment.
Yeah.
I'm really touched that you felt so safe with her, even initially. Can you tell us a little bit more about EFT and how you got into it? And can you give us more of a rundown of what it is?
Yeah. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. So at its simplest, it's a combination of modern Western psychology with the ancient art of acupressure. So as it's also called tapping, because as you're focusing on something stressful or upsetting, you're tapping on these acupressure points on your face and torso. And what the science shows us is that you're sending this calming signal to the amygdala, to your fight and flight response. You're lowering your cortisol. You're actually rewiring your brain about the event that you're tapping on. Unwanted emotion starts to dissipate. And now you feel calmer and more centered. And now you can choose how you want to show up, right? As opposed to coming from a sort of reactive, triggered, or habitual place. So that's kind of what EFT is in a nutshell. And I think it's really great for equestrians because I think there's a lot of trauma in the industry, and a lot of it goes unrecognized, and people don't have tools to move through it. And there's some beautiful, like awesome sports psychologists out there, and a lot of them are really trauma informed, but some of them aren't. And clients who are just kind of told to think positive and just like push through it, like they just get more and more frustrated because they just get worse and worse. And you really need kind of a somatic tool to move that trauma out of your body. And then I think, you know, emotions are high with equestrians only because horses mean everything to us, right? So whether you just struggle with having like just like a really bad groundwork session and it's really frustrating. You feel like you're not making any progress, right? Or, maybe your horse is hurt and suddenly you're facing like a really uncertain future and it feels really scary. Or God forbid, you have a loss, you lose a horse, right? And the grief of that is so, so big that it's so helpful to have this tool, an emotional regulation tool, to support you moving through those big emotions so you don't get stuck in them. Obviously, performance anxiety is a big thing if you're someone who competes, and it can be really helpful with that. Again, not just to work on the surface level, but to really get to the root cause of what's causing that performance anxiety. And then I think just from a basic emotional regulation place, like horses are so sensitive, right? They feel our energy. They hear our heartbeat from feet away, right? It just gives you a tool. Even if you just had like a typical day, but maybe you're a bit tired, or you're just feeling low energy, or you're just feeling like, oh, that was a hard day. Whatever you're feeling, it gives you a tool to kind of move through that in a very gentle, easy way. So you can come into that space with your horse from an emotional, regulated, more neutral place. I think I tangented off your question. What was your question?
Well, no, you answered it. It was that, and then just asking how you got into it a little bit more, how it entered your life.
Yeah. So, I had very typical kind of PTSD post my husband's stroke, right? It was like, which totally makes sense. It's like what I saw, what I heard, that experience, like it just was staying with me. And EFT allowed me to process that out of my body in such an effective way. And then when I came back to riding, this is the very beginning. This is before I got Luna, before I found my dream barn. I was riding somewhere else, just a couple of times a week. And I didn't know this at the time, but apparently I had a benign tumor in my finger. When I had my surgery, my surgeon said, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe your finger's even staying on your hand this long. Like what? Oh my goodness." But while I was riding, I actually ended up breaking that finger. So I break the finger. It doesn't hurt. I don't fall. I'm literally just riding along and I break the finger, like, because this is 2 minutes. Anyway, long story short, not a big deal. It wasn't traumatic. It didn't hurt. I didn't fall. I was literally like, oh, I think I just broke my finger. That's weird. Had surgery, had to take off about, I think, 6 weeks from riding or something, came back. And now I have this low level anxiety that I cannot shake. And I can't figure out what's happening. I feel super frustrated because, I'd always been a confident rider and I just didn't know what was happening. Like I was finally riding again. I was so excited about it. And now this anxiety was just taking all the fun out of my horse journey, right? It was so frustrating. And it wasn't until I tapped on that anxiety that I followed that emotional signature back to unresolved trauma around my husband's stroke. So, this is an unusual situation, but my body, like my nervous system had connected, right? Like you could be, riding along and out of nowhere, you could just break your finger, to you could be opening presents Christmas morning and your husband could have a stroke, right? That kind of something coming out of nowhere piece that my brain couldn't connect those two things. I thought everything had really been kind of resolved around my husband's stroke, but just having this event kind of re-triggered something there. And it wasn't until I used EFT and again, followed that emotional signature back that I figured out what was holding the anxiety in the present in place. And so then when I worked on that past event, it allowed me to show up completely differently in my present. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. That sounds like a journey for sure. I mean, going through your husband's stroke and then breaking your finger and getting into this, like, I mean, it sounds like in a lot of ways the universe sort of structuring it in a way to where you can land on EFT and figure out ways to, heal that in a beautiful, holistic, somatic way of healing and releasing of the trauma. That is a beautiful, it sounds like an incredible journey, really. And I mean, through its ups and downs, of course, such as the journey of life.
Yeah, no, it is a wild journey, but it's also, as a practitioner, I just have such deep empathy for what my clients have gone through or going through, because I've been through trauma, so I know what that feels like. And I understand working with riders, like the frustration that so many of my clients come to me with, of like really wanting something or being able to do something with their horse, you know, whether they're riders or they're doing groundwork or whatever it is, and feeling really stuck and not knowing, feeling like their body's out of control, right? Having these, what feels like out of control experiences. And it's so frustrating. It's so confusing. And I just really understand that because I went through that. And, you know, I always tell clients, your body is not out of control. Your body is a badass at keeping you safe, right? It's like we just have to kind of go back and rewire the brain about whatever it's holding on to, kind of process that trauma somatically out of your body so it's no longer re-triggering you, and you can show up in the present, aligned, centered, as you want to.
I love that. That seems legit, actually. Just, being able to literally communicate with the body and be like, hey, it's okay through this technique. And I love that you're centered. I mean, you're focused on equestrians, because as you mentioned in the beginning, like there's a lot that goes on in the equestrian industry. I mean, whether people are showing or competing, or whether they have a horse for trail riding, or whether they have pasture puffs and they're just hanging out with them, like there's a lot of there's a lot of energetic, there's a lot that goes on energetically between a human and us connecting with 1,000-pound separate species than us.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not even, you know, I do work with a lot of people who've had sort of quote unquote traditional horse related trauma, right? Like falls, or they've been kicked, or they've been bitten. And sometimes people come to me with other things where it's like, you know, I'm having a hard time. Like when I do groundwork with my horse, I'm having a really hard time. I have a young horse. I'm thinking about a client. I have a young horse and I'm struggling to kind of maintain a safe boundary with them. And it's not great for their safety. It's not great for my safety. We're just working on the ground. And I feel like I'm just having a hard time getting a safe boundary. And I'm realizing in all areas of my life, I have a hard time with boundaries, right? I'm a little bit of a people pleaser, and I really want to get to the root cause of that, right? And so then we're working on, you know, trauma that's happening in childhood where, you know, this client learned that, you know, she had to look after everyone else, and it wasn't okay to ask for what you want. And you had to really make sure everyone was okay. You only felt safe if she knew everyone around her was okay. Right. And that she learned that from a very young age. And that is showing up in her horse journey, because it's not okay for her to create a compassionate boundary and say, you need to move, or you need to give me my space. Right. Which is going to keep both of them safe. So sometimes I work with clients on trauma that's showing up in their horse journey, but it's not specifically horse related trauma. Does that make sense?
Oh, that definitely makes sense. And again, I think that that's an incredible way to position, like, just like view that, because I think horses are so much more tapped into our energetic body than a lot of times we consciously notice and recognize.
Oh my goodness. I think they're such mirrors for, right? If they're just such mirrors, I think. Yeah. I had someone tell me once, Danielle Crowell, she said, horses teach me how to be a better human. Right? People don't teach me, but horses teach me to be a better human. And I think that is so true.
Oh, so, that so resonates, because yes, they are mirrors. They are definitely, they're mirrors, and they're energetic receivers and transmitters in so many ways. And it's like, I mean, horses can react and will react in ways, and then it's like, where did that come from? And then later we'll find out that it's like a deep-seated something that needs to be healed, or at least acknowledged, before the horse can allow us back into their space of I guess connection, communication. That's beautiful. So when you're working with, do you ever work with your clients and their horses at the same time?
Not really. I really just work with just with the human element.
Okay.
Although I think, as I said, like even just thinking about the client that I was just kind of referring to, they have such a different relationship now. Like the boundaries piece is so good. And she's like, they're both safer. They're both happier. It's so good. So I think a lot of the work reverberates so much into that with their horse. But no, I don't particularly work on the horses. There are, we're tapping on acupressure points. So, you can tap on horses. There are a few practitioners who specifically tap on horses. There's a couple of points on Luna that I tap on sometimes, but that's not a specialty of mine.
Oh, okay. No, that makes sense for sure. Since you've been practicing the tapping and incorporating it into your life, have you noticed your connection with Luna getting deeper, or like do you feel more connected with her?
I think I once surrogate tapped on Luna. I don't talk about surrogate tapping a lot because it's definitely more in the woo-woo realm. But it's when you're when I'm kind of getting consent for releasing my agenda first, right? And then getting consent from her energetically, and then stepping into her energy body, allowing my body sensations. Whatever's happening in my body is now her body, right? So whatever I'm feeling, it's what she's feeling, and tapping on myself as if I'm tapping on Luna, right? And I had quite a profound, I've only done it a couple of times, but quite a profound, experience doing that in terms of kind of intuitively kind of exploring her in that way or figuring out how I could support her. And I don't know, I'm not sure, to be honest, I would attribute my connection with Luna to be improved because of our tapping. I mean, I think our connection, like any prior relationship over time, has deepened so much over time. I'm not sure I can honestly attribute it to the EFT, but maybe. I think I just think it's grown over time. I don't think I can honestly say it's probably I can't really give EFT the credit, probably.
No, that definitely, I hear that for sure. I think that, definitely time can strengthen a relationship for sure, and different things that we bring into our connection with them, and I think maybe it's all encompassing. It's all the things that are helping to strengthen the bond.
I do think, I think the more EFT is a nervous system tool, and the more I pay attention to Luna's nervous system, and the more I trust my intuition around her, what she's telling me, I think, the better our relationship is. And certainly I don't really tap on Luna, but I'm a big fan of like using certain acupressure points on her. I'm a big fan of surefoot pad work. So, I definitely use the kind of nervous system, not tapping per se, but nervous system related tools with her for sure.
Nice. I feel like they respond. Does she respond to it well?
The surefoot pads? Oh my God. Oh my goodness. She loves them. And I feel like that's a testament to resourcing. So when we resource, right, I always do that. The first thing I do with clients is resourcing, because I don't want any client to kind of explore their trauma without having the ability to resource themselves, which just means that you have the ability to access safety for your nervous system if you need it, right? And there's lots of ways to do that. I'm a big fan of bilateral tapping, but anyway, and that's what surefoot pads do for Luna, right? Like I'm giving her the cue, the pad, but she releases much faster now than she used to when I first started doing surefoot pads, because it's like she's kind of trained her nervous system like, okay, now this is okay, good. I can kind of release faster. Do you know what I mean? And I've heard Wendy Murdoch talk about a horse that she was working with, and the horse showed. And so they would work with the original kind of orange physio pad. And it would get to the point where the horse could see the orange pad coming towards him, and he would just start to yawn, right? And it's like, you're just training the nervous system, like, you're okay, you're safe. And so this horse got to the point where I think she said that like she would just like put orange things around the barn and things, because just even like the color orange would cue this horse like, okay, I'm okay, I can relax. Right. And so, I think surefoot pads are amazing. I'm a big fan.
That's cool. I love the resourcing idea too for both ourselves and the horses. It's a really actually wonderful reminder, because in any connection, there can't be codependency. And I think a lot of times, I've dealt with codependency on a horse myself and have since, overcome that and gone through that, healed from that. But it's, working with even the two that I have now, it's definitely a priority to make sure that we all, if we're working in a group, feel that safety and that connection, but also are able to step back and say, look, this is my safe bubble. This is where I feel safe. And, allowing that safety to flow through into whatever we're working on, which is, it's neat.
Yeah. I think definitely too, like after I do say, surefoot pad work with her, even if I just do kind of some acupressure, like I have to give Luna time to process, right? Like she needs like her quiet time. And, she's not really like a snuggly horse. She doesn't love to snuggle. I'm kind of a big snuggler. So like, I kind of like to snuggle, and she'll definitely let me know when she's like, okay, that's enough snuggling. Thank you. Like, and I have to, and sometimes the few times I'll be like in my head, like, I'll just go for one quick snuggle. I'll just squeeze one more in. She'll look at me like, no, absolutely not. Right. And it's like, I knew she didn't want it, but I'll just like override it, because like I want the snuggle, and she'll be like, no, I don't. And I'm like, oh, should listen to my instinct. Like, don't, so they really, she needs her space. So I get that. I resonate with that kind of, I don't think I'm codependent with her, but sometimes I can be a little needy, or like a little like, I want that, like, I want the snuggle.
I love that though. And the fact that I definitely can empathize with the wanting the snuggle from the horse, and the horse is like, no thanks. I've got better things to do right now, out of my space. You stay in your space bubble, I will stay in mine. I could sit and snuggle with the horse probably all day and be perfectly content, as long as the horse is perfectly content. But in a perfect world, they have their time, and then they're like, okay, I've got food to eat, got things to do, got naps to take. I don't need you in my immediate space bubble.
Totally.
Drift into a meditation and share that with me is what they ask for.
Yeah, totally. But I think it's going back to your resourcing point. I don't think a lot of people don't realize that we can work out our nervous system just like we work out our cardiovascular or muscular system, right? So if you do a little bit of resourcing, even just a couple of minutes a day, you're going to improve your vagal tone. You're going to improve your nervous system's resilience to be able to come back to neutral, right? Stress is always going to happen. Life's going to happen. But if you build that resilience, build that vagal tone, you'll be able to have the ability to come back to center much faster. And I think, it just, your body's either, especially if maybe you're super busy or super stressed, your body's kind of always looking for either danger or safety. And we can kind of keep training it. Like we want to look for safety. You want to feel you're okay. You're okay. Maybe things are not okay right now, but you're okay in this moment. Right. And so we can really work out our nervous system. And I think our horse's nervous system, that's what I feel like I'm doing with the surefoot pads, in that same way, where we just kind of keep reminding the nervous system that you're okay. It's okay. You can come back here, right? Stress is going to happen, but you can come back. You're okay. And it kind of builds capacity to be with those unwanted emotions and be with those stressful moments.
For sure. Especially because I think trauma can be a very difficult thing to sit with and acknowledge and begin to heal in any way, shape, or form. And I think if we're not well equipped to, or for whatever reason we don't have the proper tools, we don't know how to protect ourselves from like undue harm in that way, it can be very difficult to process through things that do need processing. If we don't have the tools of safety in the beginning.
100%. Yeah. It's always the first tool I teach people. So they have that ability, which I think feels really empowering, right? Even if there's more work to be done, even if there's things we haven't worked on yet and there's more work to be done, like you have that ability to know that you can kind of come back to safety. And I think it's really empowering because a lot of people that have experienced trauma, right? late onset kind of PTSD is very real. And it's because like something happens and it's like, maybe you actually don't feel that bad, but then you keep thinking about it. And then you think about it some more and you're just kind of making those neural pathways like neural highways. And that trauma can get kind of worse over time, not better, because the more energy you're giving it, the more thoughts you're thinking, those intrusive thoughts are coming, the scarier it feels to your nervous system. So, those things, unfortunately, over time often get worse, not better, if you don't process them out. So to give people that safety first, I think is super important.
I definitely agree. And I feel where you're coming from as far as that goes, for sure.
Yeah. And, an EFT is a very trauma-informed modality, which just means that we can go as gently as the nervous system needs without re-traumatizing you, right? After when vets came back, they learned that like just talking about what happened out there is actually not helpful because they're making it worse, right? And so we don't want to re-traumatize people. We want to be able to, focus on what happened, but while you're also cueing the nervous system with the tapping that you're okay, it's safe, what happened was in the past. And again, we're rewiring the brain around what happened. So really, your brain is kind of re-tagging what happened to you as over in the past. It wasn't great, but it's over. And in this moment, you're safe, right? So I define trauma as something that happened in your past that affects your present and also how you see yourself in the future. So, I just think it's important to mention that it's a trauma-informed modality that we go as slow as the nervous system needs.
That's really cool that it allows for that gentle, that it allows for a gentle approach, because I think, we can bring this back to our connection with our horses too. I mean, being such sensitive beings, they require so much sensitivity, and in a lot of ways, at least I've learned from the horses how to be more gentle. And I naturally will gravitate toward, more gentle modalities, like healing modalities in my own life. And so it's neat that, this just allows for a gentle way of communicating with the nervous system, and there's no rush on it, and we can go at our own pace, and it's pretty neat. Are you open to talking a bit more about your experiences with the surrogate tapping on Luna?
Yeah.
I know you mentioned it's you don't talk about it much, but I'm intrigued.
Yeah, no, it's just, I'm happy to talk about this. Definitely, there's a few things in my EFT journey where when I first got certified to, work in this modality, there was a couple of things I was kind of like, yeah, that sounds cool. I'm totally, awesome for you. I totally believe it, but like a little too woo-woo for me. Like, I don't think I'll be using that, but that's totally cool. Do you, right? Like no judgment on it, but just a couple of things. I was like, I'm not sure. One of them was like birth trauma, which, I was like, I don't think that's, and then, of course, I worked on my own birth trauma. And, of course, horses have such birth trauma. So many horses have birth trauma. So that was just definitely like, when I worked on my own birth trauma, it was just like, oh, my God, like kind of mind boggling. And I've helped other clients with birth trauma, too, where there's things that they feel like they'll say things like, it just feels like it's always been there, or I have no reason to feel this way, but I just feel like I've always been there. And, just these, if there's been big traumatic births, it's amazing how the nervous system like takes that on and kind of moves forward from that place. So that's one of it. And then the other one was surrogate tapping, which just felt like, yeah, awesome, but not my thing. I've also come around to that too. And to be honest, I can't remember. I'm trying to think the details of why I was surrogate tapping on Luna. I think there was just something off about her and I couldn't quite figure out what it was. And so I was trying to enter her energetic body and just kind of figure out like what was happening. And I'm not sure. I don't think I ever really got an answer to what was happening. But what I did feel was like, she's okay. Do you know what I mean? And so it allowed me to kind of release my worry about what was happening. And in the tapping, we were just, doing tapping. So we were just kind of tapping on the sensations in her body, which I'm kind of channeling, but like her sensations and moving through it. And then the next time I saw her, which I think I'm not sure if it was the next day or the day later, she felt so much more relaxed. And like, was it because of the surrogate tapping? Like, who knows? But it did seem, yeah. I'm not going to say it wasn't. Who knows? It can't hurt, right? It's like, I don't even know how that works, but I mean, I do in theory, but it just felt like there was a big shift. So, yeah.
That is really cool. Just being able to, it sounds almost like what I've heard, and I haven't directly experienced like a shamanic experience but it sounds similar to what I've heard about other people talking about, like sharing sharing the body with another being and helping release. It sounds like helping both of you release what you needed to, and then actually being able to see the shift in her the next day.
Yeah. And it's funny, I haven't done it with a lot of clients, but if something comes up, I'll ask the clients if that's something they're open to exploring. And I had one client who had a really profound experience surrogate tapping with me, where she was working with a horse and it was going well, but she just kind of felt like something was off. And there was some, trauma stuff that we'd worked out. And I think she had a couple of sessions left and she felt really great now, but she felt like there was something off with the horse a little bit. And when we did the surrogate tapping, the very clear message she got was like, the horse wants to retire soon. Like she's had enough and she's just tired and she just loves being with this person, but she's ready for retirement. Right. And we came out of that session and the client was like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I never thought. It was such a clear match of like, it's such a clear message. I got that. So like, it's 100%. And she ended up retiring her horse. Like she got and it was like this huge relief. Like it was a very, it was just a very profound, like, I can't even believe that's never come up. It was like a profound, yes, that's right. Even though it was very unexpected, not what she was thinking. And the horse wasn't even like, quote unquote, retirement age. But when it came up, it was just everything in her body, once we disconnected from the horse, was like, I can't, yes, it's undeniable is what she said. Right. So I have had clients who've had quite, kind of dramatic shifts with it.
What a profound experience to be able to have facilitated that and then hear the results after that experience for the client. That's incredible. Yeah. And I mean, horses, I've found that they'll find a way to express their needs and desires when it's needed, especially when we're open to receiving. And it seems like with humans, when we're open to receiving what ourselves need, then that transmits directly to the horses. Mm-hmm. And the horses are better able to communicate their needs and desires if that resonates.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's I think there is I did Warwick's podcast summit back in October, and so many of the guests I talk about just like the spiritual power of horses, right? And I think it's undeniable. And it's funny because at that summit, I had this kind of massive revelation personally that, and I can't quite put it into words, but this kind of idea of like the deep spiritual connection like wasn't for me. And I hadn't even realized I had made that decision that wasn't available to me. But I realized in that moment, or one moment in the summit, like, oh my God, I've made that not possible for myself, but not even realize I've made that choice. Do you know what I mean? And at the same time, I think like literally moments after that or hours after that, Warwick, funnily enough, asked me about surrogate tapping, which is a total spiritual experience. And then I had this realization, which I somehow, even though I'd had that thought, like one of my spirit guides is a horse. And so I call on this spirit guide almost between every session. I call on this spirit guide like all the time. And so it was this weird dichotomy. I feel like I'm on a tangent here, so feel free to pull me back.
No, it's good.
But I felt like it was this weird dichotomy of somehow like feeling like it wasn't for me, but also acknowledging like, oh my God, I'm in that spiritual world, but somehow I haven't let myself identify as that or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, make sense? So it was like a weird paradox. And then who was it? I forget who it was now. I was talking to someone at the summit, and then they were like, yes, you were talking. I saw your spirit being above you. And I was like, oh my, like what? Anyway, so it was kind of I'm not quite sure my point is it, but my point is, I guess the spiritual nature of horses, right? Like just the spirit horse, right? That speaks through us. Jordana's talked about that. I know you know her work, right? There, I do think, yeah, it's there.
So now I'm going to ask, did this...
I took our conversation for a big right turn right there.
I'm all for like the woo-woo, the spiritual aspect of it. Like, I love that stuff. Dad and I are totally, I mean, we love to bring that into our podcast sessions. I mean, we've both experienced some pretty profound spiritual encounters with our horses, amongst ourselves, amongst like with each other, with our guests in many ways. I'm curious. So was this spirit guide prominent in your life prior to the summit, or was this something that you found?
I had do you know the Akashic Records? Are you familiar with the Akashic Records?
Yes.
So I had an Akashic Records reading. It wasn't right after my husband's stroke. It was probably like 3 years after, maybe 3 years ago. And somehow in that reading, she said, did you know you have a spirit guide as a horse spirit guide? And I said, no, I did not know that. And she said, what questions do you have? And for it, do you have any questions for it? Or it came up and I said, well, you know, what is its name? And she kind of went into the records and she was like, his name is Royal. And I was like, oh. And she was like, yeah, he's kind of like, he's a bay, or she didn't say bay. She was like, he's a brown horse. And I was like, a bay. And she was like, yeah. And he's kind of got this like blue, like kind of like almost like, I don't know if it's, she's not sure. She's like, I'm not sure if it's wings or just color around him, but there's like kind of like a blue around him. And so she kind of declared I had this spirit guide. And so then I just started kind of connecting with it. I often connect with it like just before sessions and just ask for, him to join me. And I can kind of see him. Sometimes he like looks at me and is like, you don't need me, you're good. And sometimes he's like, he kind of will like gallop towards me and I feel like he kind of like comes into me, like very like he's in my, like I'm kind of like, like this energy kind of in there. And sometimes he's like, oh, okay. And he'll kind of plod slowly over. And yeah, I just invite him to kind of like speak through me in sessions. And yeah, that is my kind of relationship with him. I don't really I don't really ask questions per se. It's more just like I call him in for support, I call him for strength, and I call him for kind of to resource myself, really, I guess. So that's kind of our relationship.
That's so cool. That is so cool. Do you feel him when you're around Luna?
No, but now I'm going to see. Now I'll see her tomorrow and I'm going to see. I don't know. That's a good question. I know you know Kathy Price. Yes. So I did a remote healing with Kathy. Luna had a remote healing and I had a remote healing. So
that's epic.
Yeah, that is epic. But I'm going to check in about Royal now when I see her tomorrow. I don't know. It's a good question.
I think, and a huge reason why I ask is because I have this, and I've talked to some people on the podcast that have sort of helped me believe this belief a little bit more. I feel like horses, whether they're like in spirit, whether they're in spirit because they were on earth and now they're in spirit in heaven, mm-hmm. wherever that is, or whether they're like a spirit guide, a spirit animal of a sort, or whether they're still on earth, I feel like all of these equines have the ability to connect to this like higher state of consciousness that's
Yes.
like, I mean, within it is like the consciousness of the collective consciousness of equines, but I even think that they can connect and communicate on the higher conscious level. So I'm wondering if like, I don't know, I wonder if Royal is communicating with Luna and thus helping to create your connection with her, or vice versa. You're communicating with Luna and that's helping to strengthen your connection with Royal. I don't know.
I love it. I don't know either, but I love thinking about like connecting with that tomorrow and just seeing and I'm excited to ask Luna about it. I feel like I can ask her and kind of I'll intuitively know. Yeah, I'm excited
Definitely.
I'm excited
That's really cool.
to feel into that tomorrow.
That's really cool. That you'll have to let me know how that goes.
I know.
Love to hear how this goes.
Totally.
So it's beautiful experiences and just how he came about into your life too. I mean, I've not had an Akashic reading myself, but I've heard wonderful things about them. It's just, yeah. I mean, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah, that one in particular, all sorts of different things came out of that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
That's neat. So as we sort of close up, I want to ask about you. You'd mentioned tapping audio prior to our session. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So I created, it's a 10-minute tapping audio, and it's really designed for you or anyone to use before you work with your horse, right? Whether it's groundwork, whether you're riding, whether you're just like doing barn chores around your horse, right? To be able to move you from any stress or anxiety or unwanted feeling into a calm, centered, aligned place. And it's a great way to kind of experience tapping. It kind of feels like you've got me in your back pocket. And I think it's something to do when you can really focus on it, right? So don't do it when you're driving. I really want you to like focus and do the tapping and really allow yourself to focus on it. So maybe you sit in your car before you get out to the barn. Maybe you do it at home before you get in your car, or before you walk down, right? If your horse is at home, walk down to get them or whatever. But yeah, I invite anyone who's interested in kind of learning more about tapping or struggles, whether it's just kind of like, you've had like a bad day at work and you want to kind of recenter yourself, whether you're about to ride in a clinic and you're just feeling nervous and feeling this need to kind of do a good job or like prove yourself, right? Any of those kind of unhelpful feelings or kind of instincts come up. It's a great way to, again, to recenter yourself, to calm yourself. And yeah, I think you can just go to my website, Emotional Freedom with Sarah, and it's right at the top there. So yeah, I invite anyone who's interested to download it and let me know what you think.
Well, thank you so much for providing and creating that. I'm quite interested. I'll definitely check it out, and I hope you listeners will as well. I guess as a closing question, what is your favorite way to reinforce your horse?
Ooh. Well, the first thing that comes up is surefoot pads, but I've already talked about that. So let me think, what else do I want to say? This is such a simple answer, but the word that comes up is just listen. Because, I feel like I can ask Luna, is it okay if I ride you today? Or, can I give you one more hug before I go? Right. And I can just intuitively know, like, if it's a yes or a no. And, just listen. Very simple, but that's what comes up for me.
That's profound. I love this question because there's been every answer is so different, and every answer is incredibly profound because, I mean, the connection that you have with Luna is, I can like see it in my mind's eye. I can feel it through our conversation. It's beautiful and profound. And I can't remember who said it on Warwick show, but somebody said we all want to be seen, be heard, feel felt, and get gotten. It's one of those, and I think listening is just such a profound way of not only providing a reinforcement, but also channeling a connection, creating a connection. And it's just, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, which is just emotionalfreedomwithsarah.com. You can find me on Instagram at Sarah Louise Lilley. I have lots of fun videos there. You can kind of check those out and scroll through them. And come say hi. I'm easy to find.
Awesome. And for our listeners, we will post those in our show notes. And we hope that you'll check this out, Sarah. It's been a wonderful conversation with you. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, for sharing your journey with me. And I definitely look forward to checking out your audio. And it's been such a blessing, such an honor to have you here with me. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I've so enjoyed our conversation. So I really appreciate the invitation. And thank you so much.